Under the bright lights of a busy diner, a young waitress smiled as she served every customer with genuine warmth, until one ordinary afternoon changed everything. When an elderly black man walked in, tired and ignored by others, she offered him a seat, a smile, and respect. What she didn't know was that her small act of kindness would soon cost her everything: her job, her reputation, and her peace. But fate had other plans, and soon the truth behind that simple meal would flip her entire world upside down. The morning rush always hit like a storm at Maple Street Diner. The smell of coffee, sizzling bacon, and chatter filled the air as servers weaved between tables like dancers on a tight schedule. Among them was Emily, a young waitress who carried more than trays. She carried hope. Every shift meant another step toward paying her mother's medical bills and keeping the lights on at home. Emily wasn't the kind who just took orders. She remembered names, birthdays, and favorite meals. Regulars adored her, but not everyone shared that warmth. The restaurant's manager, Mr. Collins, ran the place with cold precision. To him, efficiency mattered more than empathy. If a smile took too long, it was a waste of time. Outside, autumn leaves brushed against the diner's windows as an older black man walked in. His clothes were plain, his eyes tired, and his steps slow. He didn't fit the typical weekday crowd of businessmen and tourists. Some staff looked away. Others hesitated to greet him. But Emily didn't think twice. She offered him the same kindness she gave everyone: a seat by the window, a glass of water, and the kind of respect that shouldn't be rare. She didn't notice the subtle glances from the counter or the disapproving shake of Mr. Collins's head. All she saw was a man who looked like he hadn't been treated kindly in a long time. That simple moment, one small act of compassion, would quietly set off a chain reaction that neither of them could have predicted. The day stretched on, sunlight shifting across the tiled floor as customers came and went. Yet the memory of that quiet man lingered in Emily's mind. He'd eaten slowly, savoring every bite as if it were more than just food, perhaps comfort, perhaps dignity. When he stood to leave, he thanked her with a gentle nod that carried weight, a kind of gratitude that words couldn't hold. But behind the counter, whispers began. A few co-workers muttered about how she'd spent too much time with a customer who clearly wasn't going to tip much. Mr. Collins's eyes followed her every move, his lips tight with disapproval. To him, every minute was profit or loss, and compassion didn't appear on the balance sheet. Later that afternoon, as Emily wiped down a table, she overheard him on the phone complaining about staff who don't understand priorities. Her chest tightened, but she brushed it off. She wasn't ashamed of what she did. Kindness wasn't a mistake. The next morning, the man returned. He ordered only coffee this time, sitting at the same spot. Once again, the others ignored him. Once again, Emily greeted him with warmth. When she brought his cup, she noticed his hands, rough, calloused, but steady, and a pen in his shirt pocket. She wondered if he was a writer or maybe a retired teacher. She didn't ask. She didn't need to. Respect didn't need questions. Mr. Collins, however, had seen enough. As Emily turned to help another table, he stepped forward and snatched the bill from the man's table, insisting he'd handle it. The air grew tense. Emily could feel his anger long before he called her into the office. He accused her of wasting time, of favoring certain customers, of breaking unspoken rules about who deserved attention. Emily tried to explain that she was simply doing her job with decency, but his mind was set. By the end of that shift, she was told not to return. Her uniform felt heavier than ever as she hung it up for the last time. That night, Emily walked home under the fading glow of the diner's neon sign, her heart split between disbelief and quiet rage. She kept replaying every second, wondering what she could have done differently. The only thing she couldn't understand was why kindness had a price. Days turned into weeks. Bills piled up, and the job listings she found paid less, demanded more. Yet somewhere inside her, the fire that had been dimmed began to spark again. She didn't know it yet, but the man she'd served, the one who'd seen her heart when others only saw her uniform, was about to change everything. 3 weeks passed since Emily last stepped foot inside Maple Street Diner. The rhythm of her days had changed, slower, quieter, and heavy with doubt. She'd sent out applications, knocked on doors, and smiled through interviews that led nowhere. Each rejection echoed the same silent message. The world didn't reward kindness as quickly as it punished it. Then, one Thursday morning, her phone buzzed with a call from a number she didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was calm, professional, an invitation, not an offer. The caller asked her to visit the diner for a short meeting. Her stomach twisted. Part of her wanted to ignore it. Another part, the braver one, needed closure. When she arrived, the familiar smell of coffee hit her like a memory. Customers chatted. The place looked unchanged, yet everything felt different. Mr. Collins stood by the counter, visibly nervous, his posture stiff. At a corner booth sat the man she had once served, the one everyone ignored. Only now he wasn't in worn clothes. He wore a tailored suit, his calm presence commanding the room without effort. The realization hit like thunder. He wasn't just a customer. He was Mr. Henry Wallace, the owner of the entire restaurant chain, the undercover boss who had been quietly visiting locations to observe how staff treated customers. Mr. Wallace looked at Emily, then at the manager. In a measured tone, he recounted everything he had seen, the neglect, the bias, the quiet cruelty. He praised Emily's kindness, not for performance, but for sincerity. The other employees listened, eyes wide, as the truth unfolded in steady waves. When he finished, silence filled the diner. Then came the words that changed everything. Mr. Collins was relieved of his position, effective immediately, and Emily, the waitress who had lost her job for caring, was offered his role. She stood frozen, tears threatening to fall. It wasn't just validation. It was justice. The moment felt surreal, like light breaking through weeks of shadow. For the first time in her life, doing the right thing hadn't cost her. It had carried her further than she'd ever imagined. The next morning, sunlight poured through the diner windows like a quiet promise. The sign on the door still read Maple Street Diner, but something in the air had shifted. Emily walked through those doors not as a server, but as the new manager, her uniform crisp, her heart still humble. The same tables, the same smell of coffee, yet every sound seemed different now. She didn't lead with pride, but with purpose. Her first act wasn't to scold or correct. It was to gather her team and remind them why they were there. To serve people, not appearances. To treat every guest like they mattered, because they did. And slowly the diner began to change. The smiles became real again, the laughter more frequent, the service warmer. Sometimes Mr. Wallace would stop by quietly, sitting at the same booth near the window. He didn't need to say much. His presence was enough, a reminder of the day kindness revealed character. And every time Emily saw him, she was reminded of a simple truth. What's hidden in the heart always finds its way to light. Months later, the diner became one of the highest rated in the chain. Not because of fancy decor or special promotions, but because of how it made people feel. Regulars returned. New faces became loyal ones, and behind every plate served was a little more grace than before. For Emily, success wasn't about the title she'd earned. It was about the lesson she carried, that integrity doesn't need an audience, and compassion never goes unnoticed, even when the world pretends not to see. And for everyone watching, her story whispers a quiet challenge. Would you still do the right thing if no one was watching? Because sometimes the smallest acts of humanity, a smile, a meal, a moment of respect, can change not just one life, but an entire world.